religious leaders say they will not close churches and will stand in obligation to obey God and not the government.
We are not wrong to conclude that our government has no desire to cooperate and consult with the church. We must put it on record that our coming together is not an option, but it's a must to meet together as per our Christian faith. We therefore advise the government to note that in closing churches, it creates a cross-axis for us to choose between obeying the government or obeying God. We choose to obey God than to obey man. We extend and advise to government that we cannot afford to close our churches. In no other circumstances must or will a church see closure as an option. We therefore reject the closing of churches, as we label the closing of churches to be draconian and dictatorship by the government to disregard our rights in all means necessary.
They say there is no scientific proof to the fact that churches are super spreader events, and therefore President Cyril Ramaphosa's statement on church closure must be condemned.
I want to state categorically that we condemn the closing of churches. We condemn it with the contempt it deserves due to the following reasons. There is no scientific evidence that points at the church to be the super spreader of any sort. And I must repeat that there is no scientific evidence that points at the church to be the super spreader of any sort. The church remains the most compliant institution to lockdown regulations and measures. During Passover weekend celebrations, for example, there was an expectation that COVID-19 cases would rise, but such did not happen. We are concerned about the closing of churches without any form of consultation that is broad-based. We are at liberty to call it non-consultation or a unilateral move by government, as the majority of pastors was not consulted. In essence, it will be very detrimental and deadly for us to close the churches again as we did in the past, because our congregants and parishioners are suffering a toll out of the current situation that has depressed them individually and as families. They need the fellowship. They need to gather with other saints.
Pastors say it is draconian to label church gatherings as criminal activity and therefore called on the church to stand for their faith.
The regulations are so unjustly punitive, and we can safely conclude that they aim, among other things, at making criminals out of people who want to practice their faith and worship their God. Now, in this season, where people want to get even closer to their God, this government has made a gathering to worship God, the most fundamental element of Christian faith, a criminal offense. As we stand in this period, in this season, the regulations as set out by the government of the Republic of South Africa criminalize church gathering. If you are in church, now you become a criminal. In the light of this obvious provocation, we call upon Christian community to be true to their faith and be willing to suffer for Christ in times such as this.
Speaking at a news conference in the Western Cape at the weekend, Pastors Against Church Closures say the regulations in some quarters have been disobeyed, but yet the church is made to suffer for compliance.
The government of Mr. Ramaphosa did not bother to consult us. We are disturbed by the fact that political events and social gatherings have amassed numbers with clear intention to disobey the lockdown regulations. Yet a church comes to suffer the similar consequences under its full compliance. We're observing that the regulations are opening for funerals as gatherings in which the same clergy that will be officiating in the same gatherings are not allowed to open the churches. They are denied the right to do so for reasons that are cited, that there's a third wave. The reality is that there is no rational basis for closing churches that have always been given the smallest fraction of numbers to gather in any case.